Well, the next Nintendo Direct has actually been officially announced, but it probably wasn't the Direct you were expecting to see held from Nintendo, but it does have very big implications on some behind-the-scenes rumor speculation talk that we've been covering on this channel, stemming from PH Brazil, who did take to the internet a couple weeks back to essentially inform people that he had been hearing that some Direct presentations, or Nintendo events rather, had been moved up towards the end of August instead of the original planned dates, to put on these showcases in September, and he is now doubling down on this info following the announcement of this Nintendo Museum Direct that you can first see over on Nintendo of America's Twitter account, where it says, join us tomorrow. This was posted yesterday, so it will be going live today, August 19th at 3 p.m. Pacific time, for a tour of the Nintendo Museum that's scheduled to open during the fall 2024 in Kyoto, Japan. The Nintendo Museum Direct livestream will last roughly 10 minutes, and this is how you know Nintendo knows that everybody's on way too high alert for their successor console, because they felt the need to clarify. Please note that there will be no game announcements or mention of the Nintendo Switch successor during this presentation. That's a pretty obvious statement, but Nintendo's going to clearly outline that until they don't, and if they announce a presentation without that disclaimer on there, well, at that point we're going to be expecting to see the Switch 2 or successor to Nintendo Switch hardware revealed. But while the Nintendo Direct Museum announcement is exciting, it is one of many events that could be taking place towards the end of this month, and that's really what we're going to dive into today. Are we talking about a future Nintendo Direct presentation, maybe a mainline one following this, or might it be some smaller presentations from Nintendo? But now that we have this first announcement for the Museum Direct out of the way, there's a lot on the table for Nintendo announcements coming soon, so we're going to get on the same page with all of this. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first start off with the original post that did get the internet talking, including myself, when PH Brazil in a podcast outlined the following. According to our own Brazil, the journalist who broke news about the 2025 Switch 2 release, Nintendo seems to have brought forward some plans regarding the Switch 2's release schedule. Some presentations, he doesn't specify which ones, that were scheduled for the end of September seem to have been brought forward to the next couple of weeks. He also says that the current podcast linked below should be one of the last before news about the Switch 2 really starts to pop up. He also adds, and this seems to be his personal opinion, that the Switch 2's release schedule will follow more or less the same route as what we saw with the Switch 1. And you can then see an updated post where it says PH Brazil doubles down on the Nintendo presentation statements, says another is coming this month. Now he's then replying to somebody who's essentially criticizing him, and that post reads, it was smart of Brazil to not specify the type of presentation that he hinted at, because now he can come out and say, I never said which type of Direct it would be. Anyways, there's no chance he'd have a source with info on Nintendo's museum. He responds, I understand this attitude because most people are out there just making stuff up, but I am not. I don't mind it on Era or elsewhere, but it does annoy me to see it here. I've given you info on every single presentation this past year and more, but to your point, no, this wasn't all I was talking about. There's more coming this month. Why would I suggest this would cause movement in the speculation thread? Now, if you want to keep your expectations set to the ultimate low side and just assume that PH Brazil had a lucky guess with saying a presentation happening in August in terms of like a Direct style thing, and then that happens, that's perfectly fine. I don't blame you if you think that sometimes people like this just get lucky with their guesses, but I do think that this was an unexpected showcase from Nintendo, and it is happening in the month of August, and he's also not saying that this is the only Direct, so he is willing to put his reputation on the line, stating that there is something else coming in the form of like a Direct style presentation. And when he posted this is after like the Pokemon World Tournament ended, which I was speculating maybe could be tied into some of what he's talking about in terms of Nintendo announcements, but nothing really massive there from a Switch game perspective type of thing. So it was not a really big event to begin with, and he's claiming after that closed that there's something else coming, which is where we really have to shift to the part 2 of the video, which is the discussion around what kind of Nintendo Direct or presentation might we see from Nintendo. And there's a few different cards on the table. Brazil's own post outlined that an Indie World would be happening in September, so that is not the planned event, so we can write off Indie World. But what I do think are maybe the most likely showcases that we might see is a Nintendo Direct. I do believe we will get a Nintendo Direct of some sort. I personally am thinking that due to the transition year we are in, and Nintendo really already outlining a lot of their first party line lineup for the rest of 2024 in that June Direct, even setting up their January 2025 game with Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, which is a simple port remaster project that they probably would have announced at a September mainline Direct if they were going to hold one of those presentations. I actually think that this could be one of two things, but I am most likely leaning towards the idea of a Nintendo Direct partner showcase. Yes, Nintendo has a perfect track record with September being a month for a mainline Direct in the Nintendo Switch generation, but they also had that track record with their February presentation, and this year being the hardware transition year, and Nintendo having to remind everybody on every new type of event that they hold that there won't be a Switch successor presentation unless if they outline as such. It is clear they are not trying to hide that they are getting ready to gear up and launch their next gen hardware, and I do think that there's a solid chance that the first party Switch game announcements are winding down while we learn about their next gen hardware, and then we will essentially have the floodgates open next year once we do learn about the full scope of the Switch 2 launch plans. And that would lead me to believe that a partner showcase still has to go on because Nintendo does have contractual agreements with their third-party developers to showcase games. And I do think that a late August timeframe for that kind of presentation might make all the sense in the world, and then it kind of takes some of the responsibility off of Nintendo for having the expectations of a September presentation, because we just saw them close out the end of the month in August with a partner direct showcase. So that is very much a possibility. The other thing it could be, and this would maybe be a little bit more on the good news for first party Nintendo announcements, is the return of just a Nintendo Direct Mini, where it's essentially a shorter showcase, not a full 40-minute presentation. And there is one or two, maybe even three big first party Switch game announcements or updates on existing games that we know to be coming out, but it is a smaller presentation, and you shouldn't go in with the mindset of getting a big show closer announcement. You won't be setting your expectations for a look at the next 3D Mario or some big Switch 2 launch games that we are going to be very hyped to ultimately see. Like, it's going to be a smaller presentation with a lot of third-party stuff and just a few different small announcements from Nintendo, and that is also a very realistic possibility of what this extra presentation could be. There is, of course, lastly, the chance that this might be some kind of Nintendo Direct game-specific Direct, and I'm less on the mindset of that coming because at one time I did believe that it was pretty likely to see something like a 20-minute Zelda Echoes of Wisdom deep dive Direct, just like we saw Nintendo do in the month of August for Super Mario Bros. Wonder, but I don't believe that Nintendo will necessarily do that. After we saw the last 6-minute deep dive trailer, I think they're gonna maybe just stick to kind of dropping these 3 to 5, maybe even upwards of 7-minute looks at the game over the course of time until it launches in September, because we're already just a month away from the launch of this thing, and it seems like between the two looks that we've gotten at the game so far, they have outlined a lot of the mechanics and a lot of what you need to know going into the game. So I am less in the mindset of there being a game specific Direct, and I do think that a partner Direct between anytime now and the end of the month, according to PH Brazil, is actually the most likely showcase and kind of where I'm going to be setting my expectations. Obviously, I would love to be wrong about that, and we do get a full mainline Direct with some surprise new first party software announcements from Nintendo, and hopefully a big NSO look and an update on the roadmap of games they're going to be releasing and things like that. But we may not get that this year, as Nintendo is very much in the mindset of getting their new hardware off to the best foot possible, and we will be making some separate deep dive videos on Switch 2 news because there's been plenty we haven't talked about yet, but things are definitely ramping up in that direction. And again, if you are to give any more additional stock or credibility to PH Brazil following the announcement of this Direct, his claim is that there would only be a few more weeks before we really start to see Switch 2 news pop off, and we don't know if that's official Switch 2 news from Nintendo or like some of the reports that we'll be talking about that suggest that mass manufacturing is probably now underway, and maybe he's talking about some more things kind of leaking out in the background. But nonetheless, I do still believe, even if it's not going to launch in March of next year like some reports are claiming, that it would be right after that, and we may still learn about the console this calendar year in 2024 and not have to wait until the beginning of next year to learn what Nintendo is cooking with their next gen hardware. So things are exciting right now for Nintendo fans. We have a direct going on later today. Depending on my schedule, I may try to live stream that. Not going to commit to it, but check back around the time that Nintendo goes live, which is like 5 p.m. Central Time. That's going to be 6 p.m. Eastern and 3 p.m. Pacific, but it'll be cool to look at what Nintendo's been working on with the museum. Obviously, don't go in with any game expectations or looking at new software. That's not what this event is about, and Nintendo clearly outlined that. And yes, no Switch 2 successor here, but we might not be that much further away from learning about what Nintendo has ultimately been working on with their next-gen hardware. But let me know in the comments down below what you think about the newest Nintendo Direct being revealed and about it being specifically focused on their museum project. And do you think this is the only Direct presentation we're seeing in August, or are you in the mindset that, yeah, things are ramping up and in the next week or two that we will actually have yet another event from Nintendo with new game announcements? And are you in the mindset that it will be a partner showcase, a Nintendo Direct Mini, or maybe a full-scale mainline Nintendo Direct presentation? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.